Hey everybody, welcome to BCB Live. I'm Sir Rick. We have Drive Safe Dave. Today we're joined by Josh. Josh is the senior editor at FleetOwner. Josh also covers supply chains, the AI vehicles, logistics, transportation, and trucking. FleetOwner, it's one of the oldest national publications, transportation publications in the U.S. Josh's background's in media and time working in journalism has given him lots of experience in topics that we're going to discuss today. With that, we're going to welcome Josh. And Josh, we're going to give you a chance now to kind of jump in and brag on yourself. You know, here's what we say you are. But hey, Josh, tell us who you are.
Yeah, we want to know.
Hey, Rick and Dave, thanks for having me. It's great to see you guys. I've listened to the podcast before, but it's nice to actually see what you look like because I haven't watched the video before.
Yeah, well, this is what you get.
I won't tell you how disappointed or excited I was when I saw you both. But I've been with FleetOwner now for over 4 years.
Wow.
I had a local news background before that, and honestly, I was fairly new to the trucking industry when I got involved here back in 2017. But I've absolutely fallen in love with it, from the drivers all the way up to the small fleets, the large fleets, and I think it's such an exciting time to be in this industry, and I love it because I get to cover technology, stuff that will work and stuff that won't work, and concepts that might happen and concepts that probably will never happen, along with the boring stuff like government and regulations.
Yeah, so Josh, so we just got back, right, to like the trade shows, and that was kind of like earlier this year, and it was cool. Let me tell you, because at all these trade shows, at the trucking conventions, all of these things, we saw technology really for the first time. I mean, it was all over the place, upgrades in this and this, the ability to track this. Technology has made its way into trucking, and we've said this for many years, is that trucking is really a technology company. No longer is it just moving freight from point A to point B. One of the things that you were just at the CES, and I wanted to go into that because I saw you did an interview, or you did a story on the Pack car. I had the opportunity to go drive a mirrorless truck, and wow, technology is crazy. Talk to us a little bit about what you saw up there with Pack car.
Yeah, aren't those mirrorless trucks cool? I mean, I got a chance, not in a Packer, but to ride in one by Stone Ridge's Mirai system, and we did that up in Michigan last year, and they're so cool. And I mean, I haven't talked to a driver at all who hasn't bragged about it and said that could just make their life easier. So what was interesting, so Packer was the only major trucking OEM to display at CES this year, and they've been there since 2018. And you can't miss them because they're out there on the central plaza of the Las Vegas Convention Center. And a lot of people take the Vegas monorail to get to the show, and it has these big escalator that goes down to the convention center, and you just stare at the Packer trucks on display off in the distance. So you can't miss them. Which I think is pretty cool. And one thing that they've talked about too is, because CES is the consumer electronics show, but it's not just about consumers. It's about the businesses that make stuff for consumers or for large companies, and how do consumers get their goods through trucking. So it's really important for the average consumers, the other people who go there, this is what the Packer folks tell me, for them to actually see and be able to see and touch a truck and see how important the technology on them is and how that's actually making the road safer. The average person, as we know, goes down the road, and I was like this before I got into this industry. You're like, oh my God, am I safe around it? Do I want to get around it? And now people really are starting to realize, I think, that the supply chain problems that we've had have helped highlight how important truck drivers are and how important trucks are. But they're really starting to see how this technology is actually making the roads safer. Look at video cameras a few years ago and how drivers were so against video cameras in their trucks. And now we're seeing how much these video cameras in the inside and outside of trucks have helped exonerate drivers that have been involved in very dangerous accidents that have, injured and hurt people. And so that's, I think, an important thing that we're seeing about how technology is actually helping the industry and helping drivers, even though it might take some of them a little while to get used to it. But getting back to Packer, and you guys got to keep me on point here because I'll easily just go off into some side road here. But Packer had an electric, the T680E, which is the Kenworth all-electric Class 8 truck, on display along with one of the Packer parts superchargers that can charge these trucks rather quickly. Still takes a couple hours at least. But then they also had a 579, the Peterbilt 579, equipped with the Aurora driver system, which is the level 4 autonomous driver system. And level 4 is what could actually allow trucking companies and fleets to take a driver out of the cab and transfer freight or move freight along the long haul, along divided highways. And then they also had, which I thought was so cool, was this DAF XG, which is the DAF, pronounced DAF, I was told. And that's a European Packer truck, which was the first time I ever had a chance to get inside a European, cab over heavy duty truck. And that had that Packer digital vision system in it. And in Europe, the trucks don't have, as long as they have that high def camera on the outside and the high def displays inside acting as mirrors, those trucks don't need to have mirrors. So that actually was a mirrorless truck.
Wow.
You could get those on other Packer vehicles here in the U.S., but they still have to have the physical mirrors on the outside. But I think, and they're really bragging about that vision system because you guys know, it's like a little less craning of the neck and moving around to see, and I think that is just such a game changer.
Yeah, I actually was in a truck, a mirrorless truck, the Mirrorhead system. I was actually ridden in them, actually rode around in them. There's a lot of things about it that make it fantastic. Number one, the broad spectrum that you can see without doing all of that moving up, checking it out. And it shows so much more of the blind spots. I mean, better than it ever did. And it tracks. It can track when you back up. It can pivot out. So there's none of this leaning out the door, trying to back up the truck. And there's so many other things that it does. And I'll tell you, it also made night driving, the high visibility during nighttime, and also during inclement weather. It actually improved visibility during inclement weather. So there's so many things to the mirrorless truck that I think add to what it can do. And it is amazing technology that you're talking about. And I think it's coming. I mean, I think
there's no doubt about it. It's matter of fact, it's here, right?
Right, it's here.
I mean, it's here. Yeah. We've seen it, we've tasted it, we've jumped in it, we've driven it. It's real and it's safe. And when it comes to the technology, that's my favorite thing. Is what it's going to do. It's going to prevent so many of those side swipes, those blind spots, because they're really gone. I mean, no longer is that blind spot even there. Drive safe.
No, I was amazed that area right there on the nose, right there to the right, like from the driver on the passenger side up in the front, you can see all of that. You can see that area. And I think anytime that the technology, and we went to that convention, we went to the trade show the other day, and I'll tell you what was the most amazing, and I'd like you to speak to it. All this technology is embracing safety first. I mean, it really, before it was about other things, but I'll tell you that technology is really starting to embrace safety as its selling point. Yep. I mean, that's what they're selling when they first walk up. They want to talk to you about how it's making it safer. Well, isn't that the first time that's really ever been the topic of conversation in trucking?
It is. And you know what I think, though, but what is a successful driver? What is a successful fleet if it's not safe? If your driver and your freight is not getting to its destination safely, then what's the point of being in this business right now?
Yeah, and I'll go back. I think this industry really changed when we were forced, and when the industry was forced to go to them electronic logs, because at that moment everybody began playing on that level playing field.
Correct.
In which you were able to start managing and looking at all of these items, because everybody had the ability to do this, right? To the ability to have forward-facing cameras. And while you talked about it earlier, but while it was uncomfortable at the beginning,
man,
who doesn't have a forward-facing camera today? And why not, right?
Why wouldn't you? It's been so, I guess I was pretty much against all this forward-facing stuff, but I'll tell you, that stuff right there, that is exonerate, just like you said earlier, totally helped exonerate many, many drivers. Actually, what it's doing, it's out there for the first time, showing what really happened, not what we think might have happened.
Yeah, and Josh, so you saw the prototypes, right? But when does that come out? When do we start seeing those prototypes that you saw at the convention?
So I think one thing that is also interesting is so 2 years ago, at CES 2020, which was a couple months before the pandemic, they had on, and these weren't heavy duty trucks, but they had along with they had another Kenworth T680 that was an autonomous truck, but they also had a Peterbilt 520 EV and a Kenworth K270E, both battery electric trucks.
Wow.
And they weren't available at the time. The 520 EV was a refuse truck. And now, though, 2 years later, fleets can actually buy these trucks. And they have they've sold them to fleets up in Alaska, in Idaho, which, when you think, where's that first EV truck going to go outside of California? Idaho's not the first state that comes to mind.
No.
But people are finding success with that. So they're not just showing. You see a lot of weird concepts at CES. I saw a solar powered pickup truck. Now, will we ever see a solar powered pickup truck on the road? Well, we're alive. I don't know, but you will see some of these smaller EVs, these concepts, things that were concepts a couple years ago that are actually out there on the road. And I think that's what's exciting for a company like Packard that has a strong history, has a strong following. They're not just some startup. CES is full of startups. If I told you guys how many steps I took that first day at CES walking around there from my phone tracker, you'd think I was insane. And I think I'm still recovering. My hip's still recovering from that's something like 25,000 steps on that first Monday that I was there. But we're really seeing, Packard has a goal, and one of their goals too is to make this better for the driver. Because if the driver doesn't like the technology, or the driver can't use the technology, or doesn't make that driver's day better, what's the point of the technology, really? Obviously there's safety, but safety is a driver technology because that gets that driver where he's going, and that's really important. So, so that's I think those are AV is coming. Too Simple had a gigantic display at the show. They did their first driverless run about 80 miles in Arizona just before the new year. And they're building out these freight networks. Most of them still have a safety driver on board, but that's going to move some freight around a lot, in the South, where it's easier for that technology to actually work right now than up here in the North where I am in Ohio, and it's 12 degrees outside and there's ice everywhere, and so, but that will eventually come up here. But you guys are in Texas, right? So you're going to see this a little bit more. You probably have already seen some of these trucks.
Yeah, we see them running around here. We have drivers that send us pictures and videos of that all the time. But I do have a question of you. So we're going to talk just a little bit about the infrastructure. And I would probably like both of your opinion on this. What comes first with the infrastructure? Which is the most successful, quicker? How about this? The EV or the AV? You talk about the infrastructure in that electronic vehicle. Dave, we brought that up. What happens in Virginia, and you may know the answer to this, what happens when we have a highway shutdown if that's full of EVs? How do we address that just happened in Virginia?
Yeah, we talk about it, and I think this has a lot to play into the fact that these EVs, these electronic vehicles, these big trucks that we're talking about using, they take a lot of charge. They're not like you plug them in at the house on a small socket. These take a high push to charge these up over an extended period of time. Who's going to build these right out there on the road, and who's going to pay for it? And how do we charge for it? There's so much
fuel taxes.
Yeah, fuel taxes, right? So we've got all these things that go into here, and I don't know that we've got the infrastructure in place to go out and buy a fleet of EV trucks, right? So you want to sell me some EV trucks, but what do I ask back? Well, where do I charge? Do I have to charge them all in my own home terminal? And if I have to charge them all in my home terminal, then I'm restricted on what I can do with them.
So that's a really great point. And the folks at Packard and folks at other OEMs have told me the same thing, that if you as a fleet want to buy some EV Class 8 trucks right now, and you said today you wanted to place an order, you're waiting at least 18 months. And it's not 18 months to get the truck. It's at least 18 months to work with your local utility to set up the infrastructure in your yard to make sure that it can work. And it's not going to work for long haul for a while because you need to have a return to base model for these EVs. It's not like the Tesla that your neighbor bought to run errands around town and can charge it back at home. And no one's buying a Tesla and taking a road trip. I live in the Midwest. No one flies out here. Everyone takes road trips. If you're going to Florida, you're driving the 1,200 miles to Florida from here. You're not flying, and you can't take a Tesla 1,200 miles unless you are stopping every 300-400 miles for the night. So the same with trucks. Now there is some success for regional delivery for EVs. This summer, I was in New York. And the Manhattan Beer Company, which is the largest beverage distributor in the Northeast, they were the first fleet in the Northeast to get an electric Class 8 truck. And it was a Volvo, a VNR electric. And this was this guy's first one. He has a fleet of a few hundred trucks. And a lot of them are running on compressed natural gas. And his goal is it's a cool thing because he's based in Hunts Point in the Bronx, which has the highest level of childhood asthma in the nation because it's a gigantic distribution center. And so they've attributed it to all the heavy duty trucks running through there and with the diesel and the exhaust. So this guy 20 years ago started converting more of his trucks to compressed natural gas. About half of his fleet is. Now he's moving to EV. But it's the perfect thing because how long is his route? He drives from Hunts Point in the Bronx into Manhattan to deliver. It's about a 30-mile round trip. So
it's a tough 30 miles. It's a tough 30 miles. It's a tough 30 miles.
It is. But adding to that tough 30 miles is what's one of the ways that these trucks recharge? Regenerative braking. So actually the stop and go traffic of a Manhattan can come in handy for these trucks. And he told me that he'd only need to charge them every 2 or 3 days because of how short the route is and how much they're stop and go and moving. So that's ideal. But if you're talking about, taking something from Orlando to Dallas, like that's not going to work with an EV right now. And even so, there's this. I don't know if you saw. It came out like last year. This concept truck in Asia from Geely, and it's a cool, weird looking, and it's a cab over. But they're hoping to have something available here in the U.S. Who knows? All these concept stuff is who knows when it's going to be available. But one of the ways that they work with that EV is to change the battery. So you would pull into a truck stop, but once again, we don't have the infrastructure for that right now. And a robot would basically take your gigantic battery out and put another big gigantic
exchange
battery
program.
What?
A battery exchange program.
Yeah, exactly. So, but how far you guys know, like how far away are we from that? Yeah. Even this infrastructure bill that had that EV charging thing, that's still more a consumer thing than it is a commercial thing. And also, where are they getting the power from? Coal-powered plants. Yeah. So, like you might not have a tailpipe on your vehicle, but they got a bunch of big tailpipes at that power plant.
Yeah, well, and they got an extension cord dragging behind it.
Yeah, right. Hey, we didn't have this down here as one of the things to talk about. You brought this up. So 2024 is the new emissions that comes out.
Right.
What is what is PACCAR? What are they saying regarding that? Are they expecting some issues when 2024 trucks begin coming out?
No, I didn't actually talk with them much about that because I still think that that's what and that's the California rules about those emissions, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So and that's an interesting thing. So I remember watching Pete Buttigieg's confirmation hearings in the Senate for Transportation Secretary, and a lot of the California members of Congress and the Senate who were on that committee were asking him about this. And he noted that we don't have the infrastructure right now. You can't require these trucks to be low emissions until you actually can provide the fuel for them, whether it be battery or compressed natural gas or renewable natural gas. So I don't anticipate the federal government actually requiring much for a while, but we are going to see the larger and more successful fleets push for it. because one, it could save them money, and two, it's great PR.
Yes, sir. Without a doubt on that. So I do appreciate that. It was a question. I actually brought that up to some folks over on the Volvo, and from a manufacturer's side, they are worried as a company, as an OEM about this. About 2024, especially right now. So so when you think about where we are right now, we're on allocation right now for 2022. We kind of expect the same thing for 2023. As a matter of fact, most companies believe they're already sold out for 2023, especially with folks trying to pre-order trucks so they don't have to get the 2024 regulations regarding California. So it's going to be an interesting year coming up. And when we talk about that, Dave and Josh, also, what about to the carriers, right? What about the carriers? Are we seeing any pressure on carriers, on shippers, on their carbon footprint, right? Reducing it, and from the Fortune 100 companies forcing their carriers as well to come in with these EVs and all of this. Any word on that?
So they're definitely pushing for it. You're completely right about that. But there's the practical matter of how does it actually happen? And I think that what really we're seeing, UPS has something like over 10,000 vehicles that are running on a low emission power of some sort. Most of it is, I think, is renewable natural gas. But they're doing that on their own because it looks good for their company. It looks good to their shareholders. It's about moving the future. But so much of trucking regulations are actually led by the trucking industry. The latest infrastructure bill included requirements for heavy duty trucks to have the automatic braking, emergency braking, the AEB. But most trucks that you buy now already have that on it. And certainly over the next year or two, any new truck you buy is going to have that on it. So that's just the government catching up with the industry. Because, like we talked about before, it's all about getting there safely. It's about protecting your driver, protecting your cargo, and using less fuel, because what's the second highest cost besides the driver? It's the fuel. So I believe it's going to be more of these companies trying to get there themselves than the government dictating it. And unfortunately, maybe some of the smaller companies will have to catch up with that eventually. But we don't have the infrastructure right now, even for like a nationwide compressed natural gas system, let alone EV.
Yeah, and as we talk about it, that infrastructure, you've got it. They got to go hand in hand. You can't have the chicken without the egg, or the egg without the chicken. You can't, and unless both develop, one's going to be hindered in its ability to do so. That absolutely is necessary on that front, and we've got to get that information not only to the populace, because if they don't see the need for it, they're not going to vote on it. They're not going to make a change, right? And until they see how important it is, because we just got to involve everybody as a group and get the information.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of go in there, and when we talk about the smaller carriers, or even any size of carrier right now going to the EVs, it's number one, the infrastructure, we agree, it's not ready to go. Number two, it's going to take some federal funding, right? And is there going to be federal funding to help the smaller carriers out, the mid-size or the larger carriers out, move to this? When we went to the compressed natural gas, the only companies that really went to it were companies that had the rebates or had the funding from the government,
right.
Whether it was with the Texas Triangle or up there in California, areas that were designed that there was money given from the government. Are we going to see the same thing regarding the EVs?
I think that's the only way we can see it. I mean, look at all the consumer cars. Like you get a rebate in most states, and there used to at least be a federal rebate if you bought those, because that's the only way that people can afford them for the most part, particularly because if a regular consumer buys an EV, that is, unless they only live in a city and never leave, that's not their main car. That's an additional car. And I think that with the larger trucks, they're going to need, along with the infrastructure and the improved technology and improved battery technology, they're going to need help to convert to this, because unless diesel goes up to $10 a gallon and it just becomes pointless to use, what's the incentive for particularly the smaller carriers to move beyond that and invest all this money up front in alternative fuels unless there's some sort of, carrot at the end of that stick.
Yeah, for certain. And then we had the folks from Atri on here about a month ago, and we talked a little bit, kind of in the same thing about the highway taxes and how these vehicles that aren't fueling, they're not paying the highway taxes. Right. They're running the same miles that the cars are, the trucks are, but they're not paying any of the highway taxes because they're not buying any fuel or not as much. Any thoughts on that?
No, that's a great point. And also, I mean, hey, Atri, what a great organization, right? I love reading their stuff, and they're a lot smarter than me. But I'll tell you this from talking to people, cars and trucks are all more fuel efficient now, which means they get more MPG. So that's less tax on that gallon of gas or diesel that is going to the federal government. And the infrastructure bill did not address that. It put a Band-Aid on the Highway Trust Fund, but it didn't fix it. And there's a pilot program to look into the vehicle miles traveled tax, the VMT, which would address EVs. And but still, we do need to have something sustainable. You know how messed up our government is in this country, and all the work that went in and horse trading that had to be done to get that infrastructure bill through. We can't rely on that every 5 to 10 years to be that's how we're going to fund our roads and not, and our crumbling bridges. So that's something that is really on the horizon, how they're going to figure out how to charge for that. And obviously no one wants more taxes, but someone has to pay for these roads. And the better roads we have, the better freight can move, the safer it is for fleets and drivers, and the cheaper the goods will be for consumers.
Hey, as we close out this show, and we have about a minute and a half here, just some final thoughts on, hey, where do you think this industry is headed? I know we're in 2022, but I'm already talking 2023. Where are we headed as an industry today with the technology?
So I think that one cool thing that about the technology is it's about the next generation of drivers. I know, you talk to old timers, they don't always love the new technology, and you look at how many guys and gals fought the automated transmissions. But now how much it's just become accepted in the industry and how it's actually extending the driving careers of some older drivers because of that less wear and tear, like we talked about with the mirrors. But younger drivers, the next generation of drivers, unlike the current and older generation, loves technology. They don't know what life is like without technology. They don't know what cruise control is like without it being adaptive. They don't know what it's like to be in a car that doesn't have automatic emergency braking and have that backup. It has, the Bluetooth, and they don't know how to get anywhere without GPS. So, you or I may be able to get into a car and, you might have an old map or something, and we might be able to get there using a map because that's how we learned how to drive. GPS didn't exist. But a lot of these guys coming up now, they need that technology. And the more technology you can have on a truck that is not intrusive but is helpful will help bring in that next generation and be like, hey, that's exciting. Because what is trucking now? It's technology. Any good trucking company is actually a technology company. And any good truck relies on that good technology. And that's just where it's going, whether we like it or not. I mean, it's good for me because that's what I write about. But I think it's also good. It's also good for the nation as a whole because you know what? We need drivers and we need their roads to be safe.
Yes, sir. Hey, Josh, I want to thank you for being part of BCB Live. And you bring up some great points. And Dave, just some final thoughts on what he ended up there with. And then that's, we've got to find a way to bring more drivers to this industry and not just butts in the seats, but drivers that a truck, an industry that really targets these younger generation, right? The younger generation, which is technology. They love it. They want it. They don't want to look to the right. They want they want that GPS to say, hey, your business is on the right-hand side. They don't want to have to look left or right. They want it to tell them what to do. They want that technology, the Bluetooth. And believe it or not, for those of you that aren't part of the trucking industry, these trucks, Dave, we've seen it over the last 6, 8 years.
Unbelievable.
They are so safe. They have the same thing that our cars have today.
Yeah, they have the lane departure systems
Everything,
already in them. They have the blind spot recognition in them. They have that passive. I mean, they have so much technology in them, and they're adding it every day and I'll tell you, when you talk about it, you look back and you think, well, good, we need technology. It's good that we're going to be talking about technology for the next generation. And not only is the truck going to be safer, I definitely want the next generation to want to be safer, right? Want to drive safer. And I think it's a twofold deal. I think not only do we talk about the trucks being better, but I think we can get the drivers, the next generation of drivers, to be better as well, as far as being safe and stuff like that as we move forward. I mean, it's just all about safety. But thank you very much for bringing us some great information. I can't wait to bring you back after you go to your next convention and let us know what else you see coming down the escalator, right? Get a chance to.
I can't wait, Dave and Rick. It's great. I got my whole travel log is booked up this year. I'm excited to get the hell out of my home office.
Amen. You know what? It sounds like we have a guest for many times coming. We want to hear what's out there. We want to see, and we would love for you to be part of this. Next time you go out there, let us know. We want to hear hear about what you're seeing out there, the evolution of this technology as we continue to go. Yeah, let's make that happen.
Yeah, and if you find something out there that you think everybody needs to know about, we would love for you to share. Come on and share with our with our people, and let us know what you found that you're excited about. Because I guarantee you, if you're excited about it, we all probably need to be excited about it.
Josh Fisher, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. This is BCB Live. And hey, Josh, you got to say BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
All right.
Appreciate you, sir. God bless.